Hello, and welcome to the AFCLC Culture and Strategic Competition video series. In this introduction, we'll tell you a little about the work of the Air Force Culture and Language Center. We'll also introduce the concept of culture and why it matters for our national security focus on strategic competition. The AFCLC was founded in 2006 to develop and strengthen cross-cultural competence in the Air Force, improving mission outcomes through education and training in foreign languages, regional studies, and general cultural awareness. We view culture as an important framework for understanding why people do the things that they do. Understanding the human domain remains an essential element of DoD readiness, not only for counterinsurgency and stability operations, as we've experienced in Afghanistan and Iraq, but also in this new era of complex strategic competition. Understanding what motivates global leaders and diverse populations thinking about their country's place in the world, now and in the future, can help the U.S. government engage more effectively and proactively in competition and mitigate conflict. Successful multinational partnerships and coalitions are also critical to our national security, especially in a world where pandemics, natural disasters, climate change, and political or economic crises call for cooperation across international borders. Even if it comes to the high-end fight, we need to be interoperable with our partners and allies to win. We can also benefit within the United States and our own forces from understanding the different perspectives and experiences of our diverse population. Fostering better knowledge of cultures in the U.S. and fostering more experience with our overlapping, shared, and distinct histories and values helps mitigate domestic instabilities that, in turn, have effects on foreign relations, our leadership and standing in the world, and military readiness and esprit de corps. Culture matters for the 21st century for the same reason it has mattered in previous centuries, because knowledge of why people do things is important and powerful. Let's briefly turn now to what we mean by culture. Culture is an essential aspect of all human lives. Our culture shapes how we view the world, offers us rules to live by, and structures our interactions with other members of our cultural groups and larger society. Our own culture is so fundamental to our lives that we sometimes leave parts of it unexamined, such as values, rules, assumptions, symbols, and beliefs. Usually, it's not until we're immersed in another culture that we start to examine our own cultural world and ask questions about the culture we were raised in. True cultural competence involves not just knowledge of other cultures, but reflexivity about our own, and how our own lenses shade our perspectives of others and drive our decisions. Culture as a concept has an almost infinite number of definitions. For the purposes of this video series, our definition of culture is learned patterns of behavior, values, symbols, attitudes, and beliefs shared by a group of people and passed down through the generations. Culture is learned and shared among people because we are not born knowing about beliefs and values. We learn culture from people around us and teach it to one another through our behavior and communication. Culture is patterned, which means that there is a level of predictability and assumption that occurs within a culture group. Yet culture isn't a static thing that is defined only by how we dress, what we eat, or what holidays we celebrate. It's a vital, dynamic set of interwoven principles, some of which can be observed, and some of which are more deeply embedded in our psyches and ways of thinking. Since culture is dynamic and people are adaptive, we can modify our behavior and attitudes to fit changing contexts, such as home and work, changing value systems, such as societal shifts in thinking about women's rights, or even the needs of an intercultural interaction. Returning to the context of the military and national defense, culture in the context of the current U.S. policy orientation focused on strategic competition could be seen, for example, as an instrument of power, a set of guiding assumptions motivating powerful leaders, the critically important context of operations, or various human factors influencing the ways and means of achieving goals. After 9/11, we learned to value our friends in the global war on terror. In a high-end fight against strategic competitors, alliances and partnerships are even more crucial to success, and effective interoperability is even more important. Having systems and platforms that communicate with each other is one part of this, but building trust and respect among international partners is equally important. Thus, cultural competence remains vital. Understanding the histories, beliefs, and values of allies and adversaries, and the ambiguous, while reflecting on our own, makes us better and more effective partners. In the grand strategy, it's important to have insight into the factors shaping our adversaries' decisions. Culture plays a significant role in how we think and how our adversaries think. Thus, strategy must consider not just calculations of material resources or military assets, but also goals, values, attitudes, and other less quantifiable factors. We have many instruments of power at our disposal. Having a more complete, nuanced, and complex understanding of how an adversary thinks and how they might respond should inform our strategic approach. When is the military instrument of power the best approach? When might other instruments of power be more effective? An understanding of culture assists in ensuring our resources are used to their maximum potential. While the ability to fight can be expressed in terms of materials and assets, the will to fight relies on more intangible and human factors. Strategic concepts like coercion, deterrence, and attrition ultimately depend on an opponent's will to fight. History provides numerous examples of forces enduring great suffering and continuing to fight against insurmountable odds. In other cases, despite possessing the resources to inflict damage on their enemies, forces lay down their arms and accept a settlement. The same tactic can have different results against different populations or in different scenarios. While strategic bombing might destroy enemy morale in one instance, in another it hardens the resolve to fight and escalates the conflict. The difference between the two results has little to do with the amount of ordnance dropped or the number of targets destroyed. The importance of culture flows down from the strategic level to operational planning to the tactical level and back up again. In operational planning, it's important to understand regional dynamics, social frictions, and layers and markers of identity to build friendly coalitions, undermine adversarial influence, and avoid unnecessary escalation. From targeting to intelligence to cyber, from special ops to infantry to civil affairs, from public affairs to maintainers, cross-cultural competence makes us a better military. Hybrid warfare makes culture even more important. It's well known that Russia, China, Iran, and other adversaries employ disinformation campaigns to sow division and drive a wedge between us and our allies. Incidents of cultural insensitivity by U.S. forces provides fodder for these campaigns, and in the international press can have real operational and strategic consequences. Through cultural competence, which involves self-reflection and understanding others, we strengthen our resilience to these efforts. Building positive person-to-person bonds with counterparts in partner militaries and host nations goes a long way toward undermining negative perceptions of the United States promoted by our adversaries. Grand strategy regularly considers political and social factors, but even military strategy, if done well, must consider complex factors such as perceptions of threat, national interest, and the resolve of our adversaries, our allies, and our own forces. These perspectives are intricately bound to culture. Historical experience shapes conceptions of future conflict. Cultural affinities and cultural frictions influence who is seen as friend or foe. Without a solid understanding of culture, opportunities for alliance building are missed, and risks can be underestimated or overestimated. For deterrence or coercion to be effective, we must understand our adversaries. What drives them? Our strength is greater when we join forces with partners and allies, and cultural competence is vital to building trust and interoperability. We don't wage war in a vacuum, acting against forces that behave automatically and in predictable ways. On the other side of the equation are human actors, motivated by values, beliefs, and attitudes. They're wearing their own set of blinders that are different from ours. And these events play out on a stage inhabited by a vast number of supporting characters and observed by a global audience which may have to choose a side in this competition, and we'd like it to be ours. In designing platforms for future wars, flexibility is key to meeting changing challenges. Rarely do wars start or proceed in clear and predictable ways. There's a lot of talk about the need to be flexible and agile in our kinetic capabilities, but we must be equally flexible and adaptable in both decision-making and in responding to challenges related to the human domain. This requires a level of cultural understanding that goes beyond a checklist of do's and don'ts, and creates a multi-layered context to comprehend and apply when making crucial decisions. Understanding different worldviews, learning to see things from others' perspectives, and discerning the why and not just the what of human behavior are critical capacities for our military leaders. Failure to do this can help explain past foreign policy missteps, ranging from Vietnam to Afghanistan, that we would do well not to repeat. After World War II, the U.S. government supported the establishment of what is known as area studies in U.S. universities. Through this, fluent language speakers were trained to research and publish information helpful to the public and the government about real-time actions of potential foreign adversaries. The goal was that the United States would never again be caught unaware of powerful world cultures with which we might become embroiled in competition or conflict. Amidst all the tension-pervading conversations in the DoD about China and Russia today, we must remember that the U.S. planners who came before us created entire academic departments to produce vetted information about these and other countries and regions. We need to continue to lean on language-enabled scholars, regional expertise, and cultural competence so that such LREC skills can remain an area of strength for our national security practitioners. We must never forget that strategic competition is global. While we need to learn as much as we can about China or Russia, we also need to understand Japan and Korea, Vietnam and the Philippines, Ukraine and the Baltics, Djibouti and Niger, as well as Brazil and El Salvador. We have to appreciate historical context, the major social and political movements, and the isms that brought us to today, from colonialism to globalism, and capitalism to communism, so that we remain competitive in the future. What are the dynamics, not just between us and a particular partner of ours, but among the members of partner nations in any given coalition, military and civilian? We need to be ready to work across any divides and navigate complex networks and relationships. Even beyond a state-to-state or official partner level, how do we operate and work on various local levels where powerful leaders and constituencies' attitudes toward us can vary dramatically? How will we communicate and engage effectively, not just for our own tactical force protection on the ground at any given moment, but also to build the partnerships and strengthen our alliances so critical to strategic competition? After all, how can we expect to provide leadership for our national security and interconnected global security without understanding the world's diverse cultures and without engaging effectively on a human level with those living in it, seeing it from a variety of perspectives? The truth is, we can't. Language, regional expertise, and culture education can help us develop the mindsets and skill sets essential to effective communication and leadership in 21st century global contexts. This video series, examining important topics related to strategic competition through the lens of culture, endeavors to help us embark on that journey.